Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Welcome to another session of a conversation with Age in Spain. Today with us we have Deepika Harjani, who is the regional coordinator for the north of Spain and the Canary Islands. And we also have John, a volunteer that recently has joined also Age in Spain, and that will share with us later during this event his experience when first exchanging the green card and then exchanging that green card again for the new and most updated TIE. As you know, Deepika has been in a number of events around the Canaries and has also been very actively promoting all the information that we have for the North in past events. On the other hand, John started living in Spain in 2011, and since then it's been a long journey that culminated this year with the T exchange. And as I said before, later we will go on through the whole process, what were the difficulties, and hopefully we will end up this session with everyone being a bit more encouraged to do the process if you haven't started yet. Before going on to that, we have some updates that we want to share with you. The first one is regarding the driving licenses. Apart from the residency process, probably the driving licenses is the other hot topic right now. Many UK nationals are worried about how can they do the exchange in 2021, how long will they be able to drive around Spain with their UK driving license. And for now we have a small update from the FCDO and the Spanish authorities that we already shared previously in other events, but for anyone who missed it, the update is that UK driving licenses will still be valid to drive around Spain until the 31st of October of 2021. This doesn't mean that anyone who didn't request the driving license exchange for a Spanish license is able to do so. For now, the update only regards and concerns the validity of those UK driving licenses, which originally 30th of June was the deadline where you could drive with that license. Now it has been expanded for 4 extra months, while some negotiations are going on regarding the other parts of the exchange process. We hope from Age in Spain that the test part, the fact that someone needs to take a test to exchange their driving license in 2021 will be removed. However, we do not have any confirmation, so for now it's just about the validity of UK driving licenses. Apart from this update, we have another update on the exchange of the green card for the TIE, and I think Deepika can provide good insight about this matter. So Deepika, on your court.
Thank you, Mark. So recently, the Spanish authorities and also the UK government through the embassy have been publishing information about encouraging people to do the exchange of the green certificate to the TIE. This is not legally compulsory to be done, but there are good reasons for actually doing this change. One of the reasons is that it's a biometric card, so it has your picture on it and you can use it and you don't need to be carrying your passport every time you do an administrative task, for example in Spain, a bureaucracy procedure. The other good reason, and it's quite durable, and we can see that some people who have the A4 paper, maybe the content of the letter has faded. I know lots of you tend to really laminate your green cards. Well, this card is plastic and it's durable, and you do not need to laminate it because it retains the ink. And then the other good reason is that it actually states that you are a beneficiary of the withdrawal agreement. So those are the three good reasons, and we must not forget that we are here to support. So if you have any doubts, that's what we're here also for. So I know that for some of you, the process can be quite daunting, especially if you live in areas where they're not very familiar with having UK nationals. Some police officers could be like a bit odd, and you could feel a bit you could have a bit of fear to go to this process. So that's why I would like to speak today with John to find out how he did the process, and maybe he could tell us everything from scratch. Because, as Mark did pointed out, I think, John, did you have the big A4 paper first?
Yes, I did. As Mark said, I applied for the big green paper. This one, I've got a
Mhm.
copy of it in 2011. But I'd been coming to Spain for quite long periods before 2011, and I'm a bit allergic to dealing with bureaucracy, whether it's the Inland Revenue in the United Kingdom or the Office of Extranjeros in the police station here. So I wanted to avoid that. But eventually in 2011, I went along and it was completely straightforward, to be honest. And I got my green form. And then but 8 or 9 years passed. And by that time, I had changed my address. And knowing that Brexit was coming, I decided that I should make sure all my records were proper. So I went along to the town hall for a new padron. They gave me a telling off because I hadn't updated my address, and I took that padron to the police station, and I said to them, "I've got my green form. Can I change my address, please, to bring it up to date?" And they said, "Listen, with Brexit coming," they were enormously helpful. "With Brexit coming, really you should apply for permanent residency. You've been here longer than 5 years." And they gave me a list of things that I had to do. And I did all of these things, really, really helpful. And I ended up getting this little certificate. And of course, you're not meant to laminate it. I put it in a bit of plastic. So I had that. And then, of course, I was reading about the TIE, and I thought, it's not legally, I'm not obliged legally to go and get this. So I will avoid going to the police station again, and I'll just keep my little card. But of course, I then began to read reports of people having difficulty at airports, and everybody getting mixed up between this green thing and the TIE. So I decided to apply for a TIE. And I have to say to you, it could not have been more straightforward. I logged on to wherever the website is, and on that website I downloaded a list of the things that I had to get. Will I tell you about them? So there was the application form EX23. So I had to take that filled in plus a copy, my own passport copied plus a copy, my green form plus a copy. Then I got the tax form, the Model 790 Código 012. Now, Agent Spain can help people get all of these forms. And I went to the bank. You go to the bank. So I went to the bank, queued up in the Banco Santander for what seemed like an hour, got to the front of the queue. They knew exactly what to do. Paid them my €12. They stamped it. Then a photograph of myself in colour, and the most up-to-date padron, the certificate of empadronamiento. They took all of that, and that was it. They took my fingerprints because the card is biometric. Now, that was on the 8th of January at the beginning of this year, 2021, and I then had to go back on. Need to go back on. You make an appointment online to go and hand in all your forms, and then I made another appointment online to go and collect the card. You cannot collect the card without making an appointment. And on the 22nd of February, I turned up, and they said to me, "Congratulations, here's your TIE." And that's it.
That's so great experience, John. And what you pointed out about needing an appointment to collect your TIE, it's important to note that this is your experience from Santiago. Some police stations do give it to you without appointments. It all depends on their own organization, the way they work. So it is important when you go to that appointment of the fingerprints to find out with the police what is the procedure. If you're expected to book an appointment, then we're happy to tell you what type of appointment you need to select. But if that particular police station, for example, says come back after X amount of days, don't forget that when you got for your fingerprints, you probably were given like a resguardo, like a piece of paper with a lote number, which is a batch number, and that's the number when your TIE, like the number where your TIE is kept. So some people are very helpful in social media pages, and they share with each other a batch number is ready up to 50 in this police station. So especially if it's been long since you have done it and you are very like worried about what is happening, find out what is your batch number and go and collect it.
Also, I have one question for John because in Agent Spain we've received many inquiries a day, and something that concerns us regarding this exchange is that some people is telling us that when they go to the police, they are being asked to, for example, provide a recent health insurance or proof of continued residency. I was wondering if in your case, apart from all the documents that you provided, they asked you for something else, something unusual?
Absolutely nothing. All of that took place the year before when
Mm-hmm.
I applied for permanent residency. And the TIE is simply the confirmation of my residency in a biometric card. So they didn't ask me anything.
Yes, it seems that that's the correct way of doing things because, as I said recently, some people have come to us telling us that they have been requested those documents, but after consulting it with the FCDO officials working in Spain and also other reliable sources of information, we can confirm to all the viewers and people who will watch later the video that if you have your green card already and you need to exchange it for the tier, you want to exchange it for the tier, that don't be afraid because the police should not ask you for any of those extra documentations. If they do, they are wrong and you should probably report it to us because we are now keeping track of these cases and reporting them back because those are some irregularities that sadly they can happen in a country as big as Spain, where you have so little offices all around Spain. In some regions, they are not so used to this Brexit process, as we can call it, this specific residency process that is special only for UK nationals. So if you had to exchange your card and you went through these issues, please send us an inquiry form, send us an email or just a phone call, and we can track your case and help you out. Also, I forgot to say at the beginning of the event, feel free to ask any questions down in the comment section. We will be reading them and answering them by the end of this session. We reserved a space for a Q&A session. So if you have any questions, just make sure to drop the comment down below. And with that said, now we have some other key issues that we wanted to comment. I think Deepika now will go through them because they are quite important. One of them is regarding the child registration and another about the healthcare registration. So Deepika, if you can give us a clue of what's going on.
Thank you. Well, so the summer holidays have just started, and so some of the kids are now with the summer holidays out of school. So it's a great time to actually make sure that your children have the correct documents, because we must not forget that the residency does not only apply to adults, and children must also be registered. So if you, for example, are a parent out there listening to us, or know of any parents that actually might not have the children register, please remember to come to us and inform them about this. And the situation at this current moment is that children have to undertake both steps, which means they will have to first submit the evidence for them to be granted residency, and then they will be able to go to the police station to do something similar that what John did to get the TIE, their own TIE. Now, it is important to take into account that the applications for children can vary depending of the situation of the parents. So importantly, it's important that the economic means and the healthcare insurance is not the one of the child in itself. It's about the parents or the legal tutors, because in some occasions, some children are not necessarily living with the parents, but they have a legal tutor. So that's also important to take into account, like a guardianship. So if the parents of these children are employed in Spain, then they need to provide proof of the healthcare of the parents, that they normally have the children incorporated in the system, and they also have to prove that they have a work activity in Spain. So if they are an autonomous or if they are working with a contract, they need to show the contract. If the parents, for example, might be working remotely for the UK or not working at all, they have any other parents. As I said earlier, this could also be legal tutor. So we might have situations where a grandparent is actually the legal tutor of a child. So that grandparent might not be working and might be a pensioner. So it's important that those who are not employed, they need to prove sufficient means, not only for themselves, but also for the children. We must not forget that every time you have an additional member of the family, you need to provide enough means for them. So like if the requirement for myself is 5,400 and then I have one child, I should have at least an extra 4,000 a year for that child to provide. And then also, I also must ensure that the person has private healthcare insurance. So if I am not in the healthcare system, I cannot give that healthcare rights to my children, but I need to make sure that either I hire the convenio especial, which I can hire if I've been for at least 1 year in the padron, or I purchase private insurance. So don't be afraid. If it's important that children are registered, and I will really encourage parents to take the opportunity this summer to do so. And I know that there are some different special cases, so that's why we want you to come back to us, because some people might not be currently divorced or separated, and it's also important to know that if you need to prove, if you are here alone and the parent of that child, like the other half of that relationship, is not here, you need to prove that you either have sole custody or that you have permission to register that child. So as I said, don't be afraid to contact us. We're here to help, and please take use of this opportunity to register your child now. That was my key message.
Deepika, can I ask you a question
Yes, of course.
just to be clear? With the healthcare, private healthcare, the policy has to be for a year. Is that right? And you've got to have the proof that you've paid for it.
Yeah, so quite recently, and the Spanish authorities are now asking for also proof of
Gosh.
paying your healthcare insurance, and it's important. Some people have been showing recibos, where it says recibo. That's not really, that's a proof that you have to pay, but that's actually not a proof that you have paid. So I encourage that you provide the policy and in Spanish. So some insurances are very international these days, and they might give you the whole details in English because they think you're an English customer. So that's for you. It's important to point out to the insurance company to please give you the policy in writing in Spanish, and it has to really show that they're covering you fully without exceptions, because without co-payments, in Spanish we say copagos, and this is because the Spanish authorities want to make sure that you're not going to become a burden in the healthcare system. At the end of the day, you are choosing to become a resident here. You're moving from your country to live here, and you need to make sure that you have everything in place to live here. This private insurance, John, won't be asked for people who are currently working in Spain, because if you are working in Spain, you pay into social contributions, or pensioners, because some pensioners have brought the pension from the UK, which I'm not sure. Yeah, what is your healthcare situation here in Spain, John? Like, it could be an example, maybe.
Well, I was here long before I became 65, and it just happened to be a window in the Spanish health system where they admitted me into the health system. So I have a tarjeta sanitaria. I'm a fully fledged. Well, of course, now I'm over the age of 65. It doesn't matter because I would be in any way. But there were about 8 years where I didn't, where I wouldn't be able to get healthcare as a pensioner, and they let me into the system. Otherwise, I would have had to get private healthcare,
Okay.
which fortunately for me, I didn't have to.
That's good that you pointed out, because it's true that there is another option to access the healthcare system as a permanent resident. So, as John had the green residency since 2011, he managed to get in that part of the healthcare system. But that's only applicable to people who were residents in Spain before a certain date. And
That's
that's
right.
why it's important for all of you. Like, if you have any questions, you can come to us, or you can come to the healthcare team of the FCDO. They're also doing some one-to-one booking appointments this week, so you can join and ask them particular questions of irregularities in your area. But feel free to ask us any questions, or any report back any issues that you face in your regions. So
Can I
this
ask
week,
another one?
yes, of course, yeah.
Because here in Santiago we've got lots of visitors, and a lot of people come as pilgrims to Santiago de Compostela, and some of them want to stay. And one of the things that they're always wondering about is how they demonstrate sufficient means if they apply for residency.
I think that one is for Mark, no? He's
Ah,
quite good with that one.
he's the expert.
Okay, so there are several circumstances that make the answer very complicated. First of all, let's assume that these people came before the end of 2020, and therefore they are under the scope of the withdrawal agreement. Let's say that they came past summer doing the Camino and they decided to stay. In this case, they could apply for residency from Spain. To provide sufficient means, going through the usual residency application, what an average applicant needs to provide is to show that in their bank account they have sufficient means. How much is sufficient for this type of application under the scope of the withdrawal agreement? It changes from region to region, but it is an average of 5,500 euros. In some regions can be 100 more, in others 200 less. But that's the average amount that Extranjería, or the Immigration Office, will be asking for applicants that are under the scope of the withdrawal agreement. Now, if we're talking about future newcomers, let's say a UK national that comes summer 2021, has never lived in Spain before, in this case, sadly, they won't be able to apply for residency from Spain. If they plan to come here, they will have to apply from the UK with a visa, and they will have to choose a visa regime depending on what their situation will be once they come to Spain. For example, if they plan to retire in Spain, or just come to Spain and work from home with a company based in the UK, they will have to apply for the non-lucrative visa. If they want to come to study, they will need to apply for the student visa. And if they plan to work, they will have to apply for the working visa or self-employed visa, depending on what they want to do. And so on. There are many different visa regimes. And in those cases, the sufficient means requirements are way more strict and nothing to do with the withdrawal agreement application, which is very similar to the normal another EU national application. Usually, for example, for the non-lucrative visa, they will have to show that they have at least around £22,000 in their bank account, for starters. And onto that, you need to put the cost of the visa itself, the visa form, all the required translations, and that's for every family member. So the cost can ramp up quite a bit when applying for a visa. But those are the two scenarios that we're dealing here with, John. I hope I answered to your question.
Yes, you did. But for other EU nationals applying for residency, if they have €5,500 in the bank, that meets the criteria.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. And
you don't have to prove that you get that every year or anything. If you've got the cash in the bank, that's the evidence.
That is correct. Yes.
Ah, thank
And
you, thank you.
and on that note, for other pilgrims that are maybe from the Europe and maybe are watching us today, and the other Europeans only go to the police station to do the whole process the same way you did when you were trying to do your green certificates, and the way things have changed now. In your case, John, you only have to deal all your experiences have only been dealt with the police department,
Yes.
whereas those who, for example, hadn't done the residency at all before the 6th of July of 2020, they had to start being in touch with the Spanish Foreigners Office, which is Extranjería, and they required two steps. So just bear in mind, like maybe you are hearing rumors because it's not the first time where a UK national don't have residency and just turn up to the police station saying, I want my TIE, and they're being kind of shocked that they need to start the process from a previous
I
step.
see.
So please do not forget that if you haven't, if for example you have a white NIE document, that's not proof of residence. So it means you have to start the process with the Extranjería. And this is applicable to those children who are not registered because maybe parents have their own green card, but their child don't have anything. And remember, I know that some of you, some young families have maybe moved, and some of the children have born in Spain, and some of the children are from the UK. So as I said, the applications can vary. So feel free to contact us so we can tell you exactly what documents do you need for your children. Should I jump into the healthcare part, or is there anything else
Yes,
you?
I think that's fantastic. Just a brief comment to introduce it. So, as probably most of the viewers know, but anyway, it's always good to mention. Proving that you are covered by some sort of health insurance is important. However, there have been recently some issues, let's say, with some applications that were done in 2021, most of them after March of 2021, where there have been some letters of rejection because of the health policy was dated more than 90 days after the date of beginning of residency from the applicant. With that context, I pass it on to you, Deepika.
Thank you, Mark. So the important thing is that if you are living in Spain and you are resident in Spain, you should have access to the Spanish healthcare system, or you should have private insurance. It's important that you not use your GHIC or EHIC card here when you're living in Spain, because that's only to cover emergencies when you're traveling. Now, for pensioners who might be living in Spain, you can also request a new GHIC to travel to other countries in Europe. But you must not forget that while you are in Spain and you're a resident, you should have access to the system. So if you are a pensioner, you can bring your pension with your S1 form. I know that back in the days, as John is pointing out, some people were not maybe asked to prove healthcare when they got the green residence. And now they're worried because with COVID, a lot of people have realized that they were not really registered with the healthcare system. So it is important that you check how you are registered and you ensure that you are in the records of the Spanish authorities, or if you don't qualify to either get in the system of the Spanish authorities, then to purchase private insurance or convenio especial. I know we haven't spoken much about Convenio Especial, but it's a scheme that is available to anyone that has been living in Spain for at least a year. So maybe, for example, it doesn't necessarily mean living in the same place in Spain. I know some people, for example, have started the journey in Andalusia and then suddenly decided, oh, I want to move to the north because it's a bit cheaper, or I quite cannot stand the hot, and they just move. As long as you have the 1 year, and you also have to probably prove a legislation letter from the UK where it proves that you cannot export your healthcare from Spain, from the UK to Spain. Then with those two things, you should be able to purchase Convenio Especial, which is basically paying into the Spanish system. So it will give you access to the healthcare system. The prices can vary depending on your age. I know the prices are quite similar to private insurance, but one important element to it is that it covers pre-existing conditions. So I think that's something for people to value, those who are out there who might be paying private insurance for a couple of years and suddenly think, I really want to get into the Spanish system, this could be an option. So yeah, so that was my important message today about the healthcare system. And as I said, there is the healthcare team of the FCDO, and they're doing some one-to-one appointments, and we also here to just signpost you to the right places and the right authorities too. So yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Deepika. And now I wanted to direct, not change a bit the mood of the conversation, go a bit back to John, less information and more about experiences. I wanted to ask you, because you've been a volunteer with Age in Spain for a while, and I wanted to ask you, how's been the experience? What are the things that you find more challenging, and how would you value so far what you've done with Age in Spain?
Well, Mark, it's interesting because, as I explained, I find dealing with bureaucracy, whether in the UK or no matter the country or in Spain, quite unnerving. And I didn't know about the helpline when I first applied, and of course, I now realise I would have found it very reassuring. But one of the fundamental things about the Age in Spain residency helpline is they don't give advice. They deliberately say, we don't give advice. What we do is we give accurate information. So we give you the up-to-date information that affects whether it's driving licenses or information about changing passports or applying for residency. And had I known about it, I would certainly have used the service. And I see, now I see the calls coming in and the cases which the helpline assistants are dealing with, and they deal with it in a highly professional way. And of course, they're very understanding, because if somebody has their residency refused, for example, it's quite a shock. And people think the end has come. And of course, that's not necessarily the case. And the helpline will provide information on the options available to people, for example. So for me, it's been a great experience.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm sure Deepika is as well. And yeah, coming back to the helpline, and especially regarding the north, we're aware that it's a wide region. There are a lot of small offices, immigration offices, and more often than not, some isolated issues during the exchange process, during the residency process might come up. So if you find yourself, one of the viewers that is watching now or will watch later, find yourself in the residency process, in the exchange process, and you experience some difficulty with the police, with the immigration office, make sure to write us an email, to send us an inquiry form, or to give us a phone call, because we're aware that those issues are happening. It is quite difficult to locate them unless people come to us and explain them. And we will be ready to help you. John will be ready, and Deepika as well will be ready, because we are all managing the helpline in one way or another. And yes, we will be waiting for your inquiries. Now I think it's time, Deepika, to move to the Q&A part of the session. I don't know if you have something yet to say about a point that we missed, or we're good to go.
One important thing about what you mentioned, some people, for example, because they find the process daunting, they end up paying someone to help them out, which I mean, if you can afford it, then that option is available. But please, if you are struggling, don't forget that we're here. We can help you to fill forms. And on that note, even for those who have managed to get someone else to help them out, please report us back any issues, because like the more information we get from all of you, the better we can make sure that either if those issues are happening incorrectly, they are reported, or if they happen correctly, we can give you a reason behind of why things have happened. And especially what John mentioned, some people are starting to receive rejections, and not only in the north, in different parts of Spain. And it's important for us to keep a record of the rejections, and for us to also make you understand what is the process after. So it's not the end. Once you are rejected, you have the option to appeal, and you have the option to either, if you think that you have other extra evidence, to resubmit. But as I said, every case is very particular, and it's best for you to come to us and let us know what is your situation. And if you can share your rejection letter, then it's even better, because we can then point you out what are the issues, why you were rejected, and then you can have a reflection of if you actually were under the withdrawal agreement or not.
Perfect. Thank you, Deepika. Okay, so now it's time for the Q&A. Again, for anyone who is right now watching us, you can just write down in the comment section your question, and we will read them and try to answer them as accurately as possible. While you guys get to do that, we have already some questions that inquirers have sent to us prior to this event, and we will start going through those. So the first one says, will non-residents still be able to drive in Spain with their British license, or will they need an international one? I drive my Spanish registered card when visiting. Okay, so to answer this question, it is important to note that after Brexit, unless a new agreement comes into place, that so far there is none, UK nationals will be treated as third country nationals, and therefore will have to comply with the third country regulations regarding driving licenses. This means that if you are not a resident in Spain, if you do not live in Spain and come to visit, your driving license will be valid for a period of 6 months since the date of entry, and during that time you will be able to drive around with that license. After that 6-month period, your license will be invalid anymore, and if you plan to stay for a longer period of time with a visitor visa or in a way that you won't be a resident, probably the international driving license is an option. Otherwise, if you plan to stay in Spain and become a resident, then the exchange, the process for a Spanish driving license is probably the way to go and the most future-proof option, because otherwise with the international driving license you need to renovate it every year in the country of origin, and it can be kind of a hassle if you're not living there anymore. On to the next question. How do we buy a property in Spain and spend the winter there now? Can only go 90 days for 90 days. How does this work? Deepika, do you want to deal with this question?
I'm happy to deal with it. I am aware that as the Canary Islands is such a nice destination for people to come for winter, well, it's important for all of you to know that after Brexit, the rights as a visitor have changed, and from now on, visitors wishing to come to Spain, they can only spend a period of time of 90 days in every 180-day period in Spain, and this applies also to all the Schengen area. So it's not only in Spain. So this is important to know, that if you travel here to Spain via France, for example, your days that you have spent in France are also counted against the 90 and 180-day period. And having the Spanish residency also means, like, for example, for those who have gone under the process of residency, you need to stay in Spain at least for 6 months every year to not lose that right, especially if you have a temporary. So, like John mentioned earlier at the beginning, he had an A4 document and it was temporary. So, if he started to commute between here and the UK for reasons, he could not be away of Spain for more than 6 months. This changes if you have a permanent, and you have a bit more time to be away of Spain. But it's important to note that residency is just not for you to spend the winter in Spain, is to actually be living a minimum of 6 months every year in Spain. Okay.
Yep. Thank you, Deepika. Another question that says, as homeowners, we're hoping that utility bills will suffice. I suppose that it's for the residency application. We haven't yet applied, as we're still working out the tax/affordability of it all. This 90-day rule is a nightmare. Well, some might agree with you on your last comment. Regarding the documents, these are the type of documents that the immigration office will ask you, so you can prove that you continuously lived in Spain, and therefore you're able to apply during 2021 for residency under the scope of the withdrawal agreement. For now, Padrón is still an essential document to apply for residency. However, we are aware that a lot of people who came in the last 3 months of 2020 had a lot of issues booking appointments to get their Padrón. There were no appointments, or the appointments were for already next year. So for people who are in this situation, it is still possible to apply under the scope of the withdrawal agreement with a Padrón dated from 2021 if you can provide supporting documents that reflect continuous residency back in 2020. However, this doesn't mean that you can come with a receipt from Mercadona from 2020 and say, here's the proof that I lived here. No, you actually need to build your case very carefully, a case that has to make a lot of sense, having in mind that the most important document, the Padrón, is not dated properly. So you need to make sure that all those documents, all those utility bills, rental contracts, school receipts, if you have children that is going to school in Spain, medical visits, have your name on it, are stamped, or have some sort of official recognition, or that just reflect a company that is based in Spain, for example, if a company is managing your rental agreement, and so on. So if you don't have the Padrón dated in 2020, you need to build a very strong case for the civil servant at the immigration office to approve your residency. But it is still possible, so do not lose your hope. We all know that the 90-day rule can be a nightmare. On to the next question. This is a bit of a long one. We hope to travel to Spain later in the year with a view to buying a place where we can both live permanently. We're both retired and are lucky enough to have enough funds to support ourselves until we can get the UK state pension in 2 years' time. Do we come over and view properties and then we find one, then pay for residency? We know we need health insurance. What other documents would we need? Many thanks. Deepika, would you like to answer this one?
Yeah, that's fine. So it's important to inform you that because you apply now and you have no connections with living in Spain prior to December 2020, you are technically not under the withdrawal agreement. So your application needs to start with the visa, with the Spanish consulate. And in your case, if you come into Spain as an early retire, your most appropriate visa will be the non-lucrative visa. One of the things that you will need is healthcare insurance, as you have pointed out, and it has to offer you equally cover as the Spanish healthcare system. And we wanted to mention that we are partner as Age in Spain with the CISA, which currently offers us packages that might be of interest for you. And you can send us an inquiry or an email, and we will be happy to send all your details. Just bear in mind that if someone decides, you could explore other insurances, but if you decide to go with the CISA, Age in Spain gets some donations for the wider work that we do. We have other projects, and we encourage you to come and look at our website to see other services that we might have that might be interested for you. Other documents that you might need are criminal records, a medical certificate, that can also be supported, the medical certificate through a CISA, and different fees that you might have to pay at the consulate. It is important that every situation is different, and also, like, maybe you are out there in the UK and you are partner with someone who lives in Spain who is already a resident, so you can also explore, because there also are family reunification visas and things like that. So it's important to see your situation, speak with the consulate for them to inform you which one is the appropriate visa for your situation.
Thank you, Deepika, for the answer. Very explanatory. On to the next question. It says, how can you prove you were here before the end of 2020 if you have got a padrón dated on February 2021 because of no appointments available? We have applied for residency twice and also appealed and been rejected, stating that we're not covered by the withdrawal agreement. Any help appreciated. Well, I believe that we answered this question before. It's all about making your case with supporting documents in case the padrón is dated in 2021 because of one of the reasons you mentioned. And sadly, you need to do a really good case for the immigration office to approve you, but it is still perfectly viable, and we know of cases that have contacted us and that have done it. So yeah, it's all about building your case as strongly as possible, and even in these cases, getting some legal professional to help you through the process can be of big help because they know the system from within. Usually each region is a bit different from each other, and they know the ins and outs from that particular one. So do not lose hope. Getting residencies is still possible with a padrón dated in early 2021. On to the next question. It says, what happens if you have had a rejection saying you didn't provide enough evidence? Are you allowed to stay while reapplying and waiting for that outcome, or does the first rejection mean you should leave so as not to overstay? Okay. When you need to provide for more documents, there are usually two scenarios. You applied, you did your initial application, and then the immigration office issues what is called a requerimiento. What is a requerimiento? It is a notification that you will receive via post or electronically in case you use the digital certificate to apply for residency. And this requerimiento will basically ask you for some extra documents that you probably missed or that they need to corroborate that you in fact are eligible for residency. Usually you have 10 working days to provide those missing documents, although you can also request for a 5-day extension if you need to do so. On the other hand, if you haven't received a requerimiento or you have received one, but then the immigration office thinks that the documents you sent are not enough, you might then receive a rejection letter stating the reason of your rejection. Keep in mind that rejection letters, even if they are rejection letters, and that's never good news, they are really important because they state very clearly the reason of the rejection, and that can help a lot if you decide later to appeal or to start a new residency application. Those rejection letters can come in many ways. Probably the worst kind are the ones that give you a period of time to leave the country and a month to appeal, but then you will also find rejection letters that do not issue an order of let's say 15 days to leave the country, but instead they just say that they will archive your case. In this case, usually it's because the immigration office says that there has been a mistake in the application process, probably a misunderstanding from the side of the applicant, and that with a new application this problem could probably be solved. So in that case, it's very important that you look carefully at what went wrong and then do a new residency application with all the documents properly ordered and everything that they asked previously. Anything to say, Deepika, about this?
I just wanted to add something very important. So, for those of you who might be at the stage of appealing, it's important that in the appeal process you cannot provide new evidence. You have to bear in mind that your evidence has already been submitted, and it's very important to read carefully your rejection letter. And that's why you're challenging the decision based on the evidence you have provided. So, I just wanted to point out.
Thank you, Deepika. And it seems that we don't have any more questions for now. So I think that, well, it's been already 50 minutes of session, so quite a packed one. First of all, I want to thank John very much for coming and sharing his view and his experience on both being a volunteer and the whole TA exchange process, and also Deepika to have the time to be here as well and sharing your knowledge. And finally, to thank all the viewers that came today to see the event. I just want to let you know that if you want to follow the latest updates of Age in Spain, you can subscribe to our newsletter, and that we are here to help. If you or a relative or you know of a friend who needs help and in Spain that they are going through the process, they need to register with healthcare, they have doubts about driving license or visas, just let them know that we're here to help them as well. They can just send us an inquiry, an email, or ring a phone call to us, and we will be there from Monday to Friday. Our residency helpline is open for phone calls from 10 a.m. till 5. So we have an extensive range to respond your calls. And yeah, thank you very much for calling, and have a nice afternoon.
Thank you.